while planning this episode, Jay and I did not foresee a turn of events that occurred to us today. The day this episode will be released is going to be the 243rd anniversary of the brutal murder of Chief Cornstalk. Jay and I, for Other Dangerous Podcasts, would like to dedicate this episode to the Shaunee people and Chief Cornstalk. May he rest in peace.
Many instances of paranormal phenomena have been reported in this desolate place. Events that may reflect the area's tragic past. Whatever they are, whatever you call them, ghosts, spirits, shades, specters, apparitions, there is not a corner of the world they do not inhabit.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Other Dangerous Podcasts, where we talk all things paranormal. I'm Ken James. This is Jason McKittrick.
Hey, folks.
Now, if it can haunt, howl, or dwell in the dark, we want to talk about it. Today, we're going to talk about the Mothman and the curse of Chief Cornstalk. All right, this is kicking off our Mothman month, and I can't wait to unpack this monster of a topic. So I'm going to pass it over to Jay for a brief history.
Hey, folks. All right, so tonight we bring you one of the strangest, most studied, and heavily debated cases in all of the paranormal world, the Mothman. From the legend of Chief Cornstalk and a 200-year-old curse, to the terrifying creature itself and the enigmatic Indrid Cold. The events that took place in a small town in West Virginia will be our focus for the entire month of November and our first ever deep dive into this particular subject.
All right, so before we dig into Mothman, we're going to introduce a new little segment here, especially when we do these deep dives and these long topics. It's going to be called our jump scare segment. So at the beginning of each episode, especially like I said, when we do these deep dives, we're going to tell a quick, scary ghost story just to get our energy going, get us into this, and keep us grounded in our ghostly roots here. So I got one for you guys tonight. I'm going to be the inaugural reader of the first jump scare. All right, guys. So this is submitted online. This is a first responder ghost story. So a former EMT and firefighter here. One night we got a call to do a wellness check on someone who dialed 911 but didn't respond to the operator. We put up all the addresses and the house looks perfectly quaint, and a little old lady greets us at the door. We asked her if she knew who placed the call, but she told us that she lived alone since her husband died. We barely got back to the station before a call comes in again. Same address as before. So we drive back out, talk to the old lady again, then leave again. And just as we get back to the station, same call, same address, no response. We drive out there again, believing that the old lady must have been confused. But this time when we pulled up into the driveway, the old lady wasn't there at the door to greet us. There was no reply at the door, but it was unlocked. We take a peek inside to find the old lady was on the floor and wasn't breathing. We rushed in to help and got her to the hospital and in stable condition. She woke up in the ambulance. She still claimed that she never called us and that we arrived almost immediately after she had fallen. It was about a 15-minute drive to her house from the station. Before she was admitted to the hospital, she asked me and another EMT if we could bring her knitting needles and a bag of clothes to her in the hospital. I offered to pick them up for her because I had a friend who lived in that area and we were going to hang out anyway. I picked up my friend and drove to the lady's house. I ran inside to grab the bag knitting stuff while my buddy sat in the car. But just as I was leaving, I swear I felt a hand on my back and heard a voice say thank you. When I got back into my car, my friend asked me, why couldn't the lady's husband bring her stuff to her in the hospital? I explained to her husband that he was dead. And when I said that to my friend, he said, but I saw an old guy in the window. He smiled and waved at me. At first, I refused to believe anything supernatural, so I called the police and asked them to do a sweep of the house. I thought it was a squatter. Nothing was out of the ordinary, and no one else was inside. I later brought my friend to visit the lady. He started describing the old dude who he saw in the window, but the old lady almost immediately started tearing up and said, "That's my Harold."
Oh, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Old man was looking out for old lady after the grave.
Oh man, yeah, that's a good one. It reminds me of the one Twilight Zone story. It's like Dearly Departed, where like the phone call came from the grave. But yeah, I thought that was a good one. But okay, so on to today's topic.
Okay, man. Yeah, we're diving into the Mothman, and before I get in deep, I just wanted to give a little shout out to the website American Hauntings, which had a ton of great info that I was able to use for this. And there's also 2 documentaries that, if you haven't seen them, I highly recommend them. Go check them out. There's The Eyes of the Mothman and then The Mothman of Point Pleasant, and they're both currently available on Amazon Prime Video. So if you have that, they're free. They're great. Check those out.
Definitely.
So before we get into the content, Ken, when's the first time you heard of the Mothman?
First time I heard of the Mothman.
Yeah.
Oh God, it would have to have been the Mothman Prophecies movie.
Right.
It was, like, because I remember seeing it and I was like a kid thinking like, oh my God, like there's going to be this Mothman creature. And, the movie kind of in a way was a letdown just because I was looking for this creature. When in reality, it opened me into a whole different world of like, wait, what? Like,
yep, that's a great film.
I didn't process it as a kid really, but then, the older I got, the more I did the research into it and I started, going, oh, okay. This isn't just some moth creature trying to, fucking tear people limb to limb.
No, it's true. And, we'll get into the things in that movie that were inspired by real life events. But I think that was also my introduction to it, and also to the introduction of the concept of what an ultra terrestrial is. Yeah, we'll get to that later. All right, folks. So there's some history in this episode, so I'm going to get into it for you because it's very important to understand all this, because there really is, the land itself has a real history that really backs up the rest of the story. So here we go. So the legend of Chief Cornstalk. Chief Cornstalk, or Hoko Lesqua, as he was known in his native tongue, born in 1720 in what is now Pennsylvania. He was a feared and well-respected chief of the Shaunee Nation and made a name for himself in Dunmore's War of 1774, which were land disputes. Cornstalk and his people disputed a previous treaty that ceded hunting ground to the British settlers, and although unsuccessful, Cornstalk was known to seek out peace before conflict. He was also known for his skills as an orator, and this is something that was remarked upon by British soldiers who were present. So, during the American Revolution, Cornstalk aimed to stay neutral in the conflict and was present at many peace talks. But it kind of went bad for him.
Yeah.
They kind of took advantage of him, and it's kind of terrible. So in 1777, Cornstalk and his son Red Hawk made a diplomatic visit to Fort Randolph, which resides in current-day Point Pleasant, West Virginia, to discuss further plans of neutrality, but were captured by the fort's commander for literally no other reason than his personal dislike of the Shawnee. He was held captive there for a short period of time, and on November 10th, while in custody at Fort Randolph, a militiaman who was stationed in the fort was said to have been killed by an unknown group of Native Americans just outside the fort. So,
sounds fishy.
Yeah. So when this his bloody corpse was returned to the fort, the soldiers in the garrison were enraged. So acting against orders, they broke into the quarters where Cornstalk and the other Native Americans were being held. Even though the men had nothing to do with the crime, they decided to execute the prisoners as revenge. So as the soldiers burst through the doorway, Cornstalk rose to meet them. And it was said that he stood facing the soldiers with such bravery that they paused momentarily in their attack.
Oh.
Yeah. But it wasn't enough, though, and the soldiers opened fire with their muskets. Red Hawk, his son, tried to escape up through the chimney but was pulled back down and slaughtered. And as for Cornstalk, he was shot 8 times before he fell to the floor. And this is musket fire, so if you know anything about guns, that's wow.
Yeah.
So, as he lay dying in the smoke-filled room, he was said to have pronounced his now legendary curse. The stories say that he looked upon his assassin and spoke to them and said, "I was the borderman's friend. Many times I have saved him and his people from harm. I never warred with you, but only to protect our wigwams and lands. I refused to join your pale-faced enemies with the red coats. I came to the fort as your friend, and you murdered me. You have murdered by my side my young son. For this, may the curse of the Great Spirit rest upon this land. May it be blighted by nature. May it be blighted in its hopes. May the strength of its peoples be paralyzed by the stain of our blood." So he speaks these words, and so says the legend, and he died. The bodies were then taken and dumped into the Kanawha River. Sorry about the pronunciation. I don't live around there. But Cornstalk's corpse was buried near the fort on Point Pleasant, overlooking the junction of the Kanawha and Ohio rivers. Here he remained for many years, but he would not rest in peace.
No, sir. I mean, just a couple things that going back over this stuff.
It was dense. It was dense info. So go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the couple things like, all right. So like I tend to do, I always like to go to residual hauntings first. And, like the idea of him, he was, known as a leader of his people. He was known, to be able to rally his people in a way that their passion and everything, their full belief was with him.
October 10th, 1774. It was at this very location, over 230 years ago, that a fierce battle ensued between Virginia militiamen and a conjoined force of Native American tribes, led by a great Shawnee warrior known as Chief Cornstalk. Cornstalk, a man feared by many, led over 500 men into battle in what many historians argue as the first conflict of the American Revolution.
Cornstalk was the king. He was the king of the Shawnee Nation and the affiliated tribes. He was the main man. He was the king. They say he was the king of the tribes.
Well, Cornstalk was a very famous Shawnee leader, and he had a number of other family members who lived in southern Ohio. But of course, he's chiefly known as the military leader in the unfortunate Battle of Point Pleasant.
Cornstalk, I think, is viewed more as a legendary character instead of a hero. In the Indian world, we don't like to call, pinpoint them as heroes. It's kind of hard label to put on them because they were just trying to survive.
He was concerned with social issues and the welfare of the community, but he was pressured by his warriors into taking a leadership role at the Battle of Point Pleasant. And there are stories of his booming voice, because he was an orator, resounding over the battlefield during the course of the battle, urging his people on. And that's what a lot of Shawnees still remember.
And I mean, that slaughtering and all the battles that they went through leading up to this peace treaty, which was obviously violated, not by, the orders of the commanders on site, but by, the angry, I guess, military men that were there. But like the karmatic stain that could have left just for doing that and the energy surrounding that.
Sure.
I mean, my question kind of is, and I'm sure we'll get back to this later, but could it have been just some sort of super like mega residual haunting that kind of could be seen as a curse, or who
knows? There's never been any haunting, quote unquote, activity, like classic haunting activity associated with the whole Mothman case. But there's definitely something of quality when you start speaking about, something imprinting on the land. Because if you go, from what I understand, from the Native American side, being a prisoner of war and being a peacemaker is like a very sacred state. So him being slaughtered in that sacred state to them is like a very supercharged state. So that in itself seems to be okay, well, he was there under a white flag of truce. He was just there to do his business, and they just murdered him and his son. So just that from, if we look at that from what we know or seem to know about residual hauntings, that seems to be almost oh my God. And then you have this happen at the confluence of two rivers. That whole
water moving. Yeah.
Moving water. There's books and books have been written on, flowing water in the paranormal. And then on top of that, then you have the Native American beliefs on top of that. So you have all these things coming together, and then there's the legend of him actually, mouthing a curse at these people. So it's oh my God.
Well, like,
So-
real quick, go into that too. Like, one of my favorite things is to discuss Native American hauntings and like the burial ground and everything, just because the traditions of the people, you know.
Yeah.
And we talked about it on one of the listener stories. You brought it up about the spirit of land or of place, spirit of place.
Oh, the genus Loki. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a Roman belief.
Yeah, well, I mean, who's to say totems and things like that don't
Oh, yeah,
lend themselves,
yeah.
you know what I mean, like lend themselves to that kind of thing, and I just think like the energy of the people and the power that actually generates of long lineage of being in a place, and then that uprooting of trust and tradition. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. A people so connected to the land through so many thousands of years, just being completely I mean, what words do you have? Bad karma, bad juju, whatever it is. They did it all that day. They,
they broke the fucking bar right there.
Right.
Just right in
And
there.
then on top of it, so, you would think this horrible thing happens. The murderers were brought to trial. The murderers of Chief Cornstalk and his son Red Hawk, at the insistence of Governor Patrick Henry. Yes, that Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death. But because none of the other soldiers would testify against their fellow soldiers, they were all set free. So another insult on top.
Yep.
So fast forward a bit to 1794. The town of Point Pleasant was established near the site of this old fort. For many years after, the Native American's grave lay undisturbed, but in 1840, his bones were removed to the grounds of the Mason County Courthouse, where in 1899, a monument was erected in Cornstalk's memory. So then we fast forward to the late 1950s, a new courthouse was built in Point Pleasant, and the chief's remains, which now consisted of 3 teeth and about 15 pieces of bone, were placed in an aluminum box and reinterred in a corner of the town's Tuende Way Park, next to the grave of a Virginia frontiersman that Cornstalk once fought and later befriended. So they erected this big 12-foot monument that was for his honor.
Yeah.
So it continues.
Yeah.
So they build this monument, and they erect the original monument, which it was 86 feet tall, and it was dedicated in August of 1909. Which was a little bit behind schedule. So originally the dedication ceremony had been set for July 22nd, but on the night before the event, the clear sky just suddenly overhead erupted with lightning and struck the upper part of the crane that was supposed to mount the monument into place. And the machine was damaged, and it took nearly a month for them to repair it. So the monument finally gets dedicated and stood for years until July 4th. Kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Of 1921. On that day, another bolt of lightning struck the monument and damaged the capstone and some of the granite blocks that was, part of the construction. They were replaced, and the monument still stands today. But what was it about this stone that was getting struck by lightning, right?
Yeah. Stone getting struck by lightning.
Yeah, it's, I mean, it's interesting. Could the freak lightning strikes have been acts of vengeance tied to Cornstalk's fabled curse?
I like to believe so.
Many believe so. And for years, residents of the triangular area made up of Western Virginia, Southwest Pennsylvania, and Southeastern Ohio spoke of strange happenings, river tragedies, and fires as part of the curse. So, of course, many laughed and said that the curse was nothing more than overactive imaginations, ignoring the death toll, and eerie coincidences that seemed to plague the region for 200 years after the death of Chief Cornstalk.
But yeah, so another thing too with the Shaunee and other Native American tribes, the idea that the disasters and tragic occurrences within the Shaunee homeland, that's a big belief of theirs, that they didn't divide it in the way of state lines and
Right.
governors and all that kind of stuff. It was, this was the homeland of their tribe. So, the great atrocity that befell, their once beloved chief that was able to rally these people, it just, with all these tragedies and stuff within this homeland, is it just like a stain, an energy stain, or some kind of just, crazy coincidence that this would happen there,
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, I pulled a quote from an article that I was reading that kind of seemed to crystallize it a bit. They said, Point Pleasant was built on soil stained with the blood of a vengeful spirit. I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
I mean,
don't mean to laugh at it like, it's not funny by any means, but
right. I mean, I'm not going to say every, but plenty of great, paranormal stories or tragic cases. It's like, oh, and it was also built on Native American burial grounds.
Yeah.
Oh, of course it was.
Yeah.
It's like, and you know what? You guys fucking deserve it.
Yeah, you fucking do. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's out of control.
And one of the things too that I was thinking, so the Shaunee natives, they were I've seen a couple interviews with some of the people. They were talking about their elders, how they explained to them that witchcraft and curses, they only exist if someone believes in them. So if you're not a believer in them, you don't give it any credence, then you are immune. But the people out there in Point Pleasant and that area, a lot of them do believe that all these tragedies have to have been tied in with the curse. And it's like, are you inviting that in, just because of your belief?
Sure. I mean, and that's probably that's a line that runs through many paranormal stories, right? I mean, it's like they tell you, well, if you believe in it, it gives it power, right?
Yeah, and you fear it gives it power.
Right. And what does that mean? It gives it power. What does that mean? Is that just you giving what is within you power to just continually create this thing for yourself? Or is it some, paranormal entity? We don't know.
Yeah,
but
we don't.
It's interesting that every culture kind of comes to somewhat of the same conclusion, which is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've talked about it too, they've done studies on this kind of stuff of the belief of do I believe in it, is it real, and then things end up manifesting themselves,
Right. So I got a little timeline here for is it really a curse? Is the area cursed? Well, I have a little timeline here, and I'm going to read a few examples of things that have happened over the last I narrowed it to just a century, so you tell me. You tell me. Yeah. 1907, the worst coal mine disaster in American history took place in Monongah, West Virginia, on December 6th, with 310 miners were killed. 1944, in June of this year, 150 people were killed when a tornado ripped through the tri-state triangular area, which includes Point Pleasant.
Yeah, wow, that's
okay.
Weird.
All right. I'm going to include this in the timeline, but we will come back to this, obviously, if you know the story. 1967, the devastating Silver Bridge disaster sent 46 people hurtling to their death into the Ohio River on December 15th.
Surely that's it. Surely that's enough.
We're not going to come back to the Silver Bridge at all. Obviously, and just as a footnote here, many have also connected this tragedy to the eerie sightings of the Mothman, strange lights in the sky, and odd paranormal happenings. That might turn into a podcast, folks. Yeah. I don't know. So beyond that, because folks point to, that was the end. The Silver Bridge incident was the end.
That was it.
How about the next year? 1968, a Piedmont Airlines plane crashed in August near the Kanawha Airport, killing 35 people on board. 1970. No. On November 14th, a Southern Airways DC-10 crashed into a mountain range near Huntington, West Virginia, killing 75 people on board.
Was there a stone statue on board that could have been targeted more than once?
Obviously.
Yeah.
1976. In March of that year, the town of Point Pleasant was rocked in the middle of the night by an explosion at the Mason County Jail. Okay? Housed in the jail was a woman named Harriet Sisk, who had been arrested for the murder of her infant daughter. On March 2nd, her husband came to the jail with a suitcase full of explosives to kill himself and his wife and to destroy the building. Both of the Sisks were killed, along with 3 law enforcement officers.
Yeah,
big deal.
Yeah, no shit, Jesus Christ.
1978. In January, a freight train derailed at Point Pleasant and dumped thousands of gallons of toxic chemicals. The chemicals contaminated the town's water supply, and the wells had to be abandoned. Also in 1978. Is that
it? Are we done?
This is the last one. In April of the same year, the town of St. Mary's, just north of Point Pleasant, was struck with tragedy when 51 men who were working on the Willow Island power plant were killed when the construction scaffolding collapsed. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what does this mean? Well, it means that the death of Cornstalk and his alleged curse, a deep shadow was cast over Point Pleasant for what seemed to be 200 years, culminating with the collapse of the Silver Bridge on December 15, 1967, and the resulting deaths of 46 people.
It's fishy stuff, folks. Fishy stuff, folks. I mean,
and it's an area where a lot of bad things have happened. Now, these are just like the high points. I mean, you look into this stuff a little bit. You'll ask her. I have yet to visit there, but this is a bucket list place, and I guarantee I'll get there someday, hopefully together.
Yeah, hopefully.
Plenty of residents. Still to this day, some of the old school folks who were there to witness, the actual sightings or the hysteria surrounded by the Mothman. But there's something about the place. They'll tell you, like, you get there and there's, could it be the confluence of those two rivers? Could it be the Cornstalk curse? Could it just be all of it?
Yeah.
They say there's just something about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, like okay, so like obviously the town has like a fanfare with like they latch on to promote the myth and everything of the Mothman, which we'll get into the actual creature eventually, but it's like there's something different about Point Pleasant and the Mothman story that resonates with me. That's different from then like an Area 51 or like what's it called, Nevada.
Area 51.
The what's the
Roswell?
town? Roswell, New Mexico. I'm sorry, Roswell, New Mexico, and the landings. It's like there wasn't tragedies around it. Like Point Pleasant in that area has had so many tragedies, and like there's still like a fanfare from like the locals. Like
oh yeah, and it's let's be honest, it's it's a small town in West Virginia. They're like, all right, we got a monster, we got to monetize now.
Yeah.
They have the Mothman Festival every year. They have the museum. I mean, it looks like a blast. Like I want to go one year.
Fuck yeah, dude. Let's hope this takes off and we'll film from there eventually, Fuck.
Or just do it anyway.
Yeah, we'll just hopefully we'll just do it anyway. But yeah, no, like and just like the history of Cornstalk too, that like might lead this, like like they were saying, the dark shadow cast by a vengeful spirit. The type of battle. So like he did eventually befriend the frontiersmen and a lot of those people there that just betrayed him, but the warfare that went on, like let's say the whites, the pale faces, we'll call them, they they fought with the muskets, and then when that they couldn't reload them fast enough. Once those were done, once the gunpowder cleared, you're in there hand to hand, and you better bet your ass that the Native Americans and the Shaunee were well versed in all kinds of clubs, spears, knives, hatchets, tomahawks, all those kind of things.
Just think less of the Mohicans, folks.
Yeah. And think about that emotion that's like cast on a place. Like, you're not fighting at a distance, and especially you're banking on your firepower, and then just this massive emotion and kind of hatred,
sure,
coming from the opposition who are just like, you've been blowing us away doing this kind of shit, and now it's like, all right, here's what we got, here's our power, our togetherness, our energy, our collective, the spirit of us. You have to almost think that that's in the ground, that's in the area. It has to be.
Yeah, no, it's those emotions and definitely all that blood definitely seeped into that land.
Yeah. Yeah, and where do you even where do you even put? I don't want to say, because I'm not going to try to put my finger on anything, but like just with any other kind of like nation or people, when something like that happens, like the energy, obviously, when you get to those battlefields, is palpable. Like
sure. I mean, like we've discussed in previous episodes, somewhere like Gettysburg, where you go there, it's like, yep, loss of life, absolutely. This place just ain't right anymore. And I think, haven't been there yet, like we just said, but many people who have gone there kind of get somewhat of the same idea. Like you go there and there's a mood to the place, and it's absolutely palpable.
Yeah, and like like, let's not even call it paranormal. Let's just call it, you said, like, this place ain't right anymore, like.
Right.
Like,
I mean, by definition, it would still be paranormal, but, you don't even have to try to classify it. You can just go there and, you don't need to go there with your K2 meter, PKE meters, whatever.
Yeah. Any of them, your LMD. Yeah, there he is. I'm not repping any Ghostbuster shirt tonight.
I just showed my Ghostbuster shirt because
a rare occurrence. I'm not wearing a Ghostbusters t-shirt.
Although you did have a Ghostbuster shirt on last week, and I didn't. So we're just crossing the streams.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, but so, like, okay, so that curse that he taught, that he apparently uttered with his last words. When I was watching, like, I didn't really see anyone really mention it. So, like, can we assume that might be kind of drudged up by the witnesses, the people that were around there? Or
well, yeah, I mean, here's an important little tidbit. So in 2008, during the demolition of an old schoolhouse in Point Pleasant, a playbill, all right, from 1928 was discovered in this, like, hidden room of the schoolhouse. And the playbill was from a pageant that was put on about the Cornstalk story, and it mentioned the curse. And according to local historians, that was the first mention that there ever was a curse.
Yeah.
In the early 20s, there was a play performed here. A good friend of mine's mother was in that play. She was a young girl. And in the play, they mentioned the Cornstalk curse. And it's just grown from that. Because, if a man is murdered, he doesn't have time to put a curse on the city of Point Pleasant.
If they riddled him with shots and they killed him, he would have died instantly. If he was shot once and could put a curse on this place, then it was a slower death. I don't know. Here we go into this fiction and facts.
Native people tend to think in terms of community and in terms of tribe, and that means territory, land. Anything that they're concerned with, or what they're most concerned with, is their home territory. Any ceremonies they do, any prayers they offer affect that area. So people who did the Shawnee wrong will most suffer consequences within the boundaries of the Shawnee homeland.
But then I find in plenty of other places that, no, that's not true. Like, even, before Point Pleasant was a place, they were saying, that there was some kind of, like, curse because of the way that, Cornstalk had been killed, and, betrayed and, murdered.
Yeah. Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Is there embellishment on people's parts? Probably. But, historically, the story stands that, he was murdered in this place. And even that's enough, I would think, to stain the environment in a way.
Absolutely.
Where, whether he uttered a curse or not, people who were rooted to the land for thousands of years were murdered in that spot in a very despicable manner. And, if that causes, giant red-eyed bird monsters that are also ultra-terrestrials to come out, in the 1960s, then, you fucked up.
Yeah, you fucked up, dude. You fucked up, dude. But, like, the thing too is, like even from the other end, like, let's say not just the Native American end, but also it was a vendetta murder. That's what it was, because they were like, they killed one of our guys. It was just people. Whether it be someone staged it, which most likely someone staged one of their people getting killed and claimed that, because we want to kill this great chief and his son and kind of squash, the power of him.
Yeah, they were just forcing other treaties just so they could just, get more land.
Yeah, and imagine the energy latched onto the land from the other side, whether it be the hatred that caused that, or the actual just belief in, like, oh my God, this happened. Like, even fool's gold, like being thrust upon just some useful idiots out there, you know what I mean? That would get coerced into doing some horrible shit. Like, the emotion on both sides must have, you could have cut it with a knife. It must have been insane. It must have been insane.
Right. Yeah, no, it's something to consider. And it's also, because this is squarely in the legend category, it's really like, pull in the information that you hear. And this is basically what we did, folks, when we were, researching for this. We looked at a bunch of different, outlets of information, and, it's just what we came up with. And it's
held together your best resources to come up with an accurate depiction of what actually happened.
Right. Which is almost impossible anyway, because we're separated by so many years, almost, over 200 years at this point. So, and there it is. So, I came across another topic in the researching this that they link to the Cornstalk legend, and I wanted to put it in this episode because we're gonna get to the creature next episode, and a bunch of the other things, and I'll address that later. But I wanted to leave this in this episode because this seems very much in the legend category, and I also think it's also a misunderstanding of Native American legend. So I came across plenty of folks that linked sightings of the Mothman to the Native American Thunderbird legend. Okay, and hey, on the surface, you look at it, Thunderbird, Mothman, maybe there's a thing. No. Nope. Thunderbirds do not attack people. They're basically almost like in an eternal battle with the great horned serpent. That's his opposite. That's in the underground. They don't come about by curses. So I want to leave that here rather than mention that in the later episode when we start talking about the creature, that I think that's 100% bullshit. And I also think it's a misunderstanding of Native American culture.
I had a moment there when I was like, maybe.
See, that's what I mean. Like, no, and no fault on you.
Yeah.
It sounds good.
Yeah, it
right?
sounds cool. And then you're like, wait, no, remember. And I'm like, I'm an asshole right now.
Yeah, right.
I'm such an asshole.
Yeah, it's like, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
In their teepees, and no asshole.
Yeah.
Teepees out. It's just, So I wanted to keep, and also more importantly, I wanted to keep most of the Native American stuff in this first episode where I had all the information on it, so I can speak from a point where I have not so much knowledge, but I've researched enough on this, so I don't just off the cuff mention more Native American things because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and I don't want to come off as ignorant.
Yeah, and also you. You don't want to be, just mixing up just a mishmash of and then there's the thunder rods and all the kind of totem poles. But when I said totems earlier, I didn't mean totem poles. I meant totems, which is another kind of thing that comes from.
Yes, you did, you jerk. We know what you're about.
Oh, yeah, we don't. Yeah, locksmiths. What is it? Locksmiths? What was the other one? Hunters. I apparently threw shade at. And then what was the last one? What was the last one I apparently threw shade at?
I don't know. I'll have to come up with a list, and we'll just throw them at you one episode.
Yeah, and you just hit me with them, and I'm gonna have to dodge them and come up with different ways to, take my shade away.
That'll be your, New Year's resolution for next year. Take the shade away. I mean,
hashtag take the shade away T-shirt for me.
Yeah, exactly. Hashtag Ken take the shade away.
Oh my god.
You fuck.
I have respect for all professions. If you're a professional and you're good at your career,
I mean, I don't, but you seem to have a problem with almost everybody.
Oh, fuck you, dude.
It's fine. It's fine. And you know who else is fine?
Peter James.
I'm coming through.
Yes.
Okay.
So, that's what I've got for Chief Cornstalk. I mean, it's a great legend, and that's why we titled this episode "The Legend of Chief Cornstalk," because there's only so much we're going to know, factually and what's been told. And I think it definitely is an interesting framework that we can see, or an interesting lens that we can see the next coming events through. Like, we're already going in, and there's already this deep shadow that's been cast over this town. It's like we already have 1 foot in shit. So let's see what comes up next. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you've said to me too, because I've brought up the high strangeness thing in relation to certain things, which ignorantly I used for other places, which are just pretty spooky. But there's a couple things you want to kind of give a little clarification on that as we go forward.
Well, high strangeness, I may be incorrect, and if I am, I will correct myself in the next episode because I don't have my notes in front of me for that. But I believe high strangeness was coined by John Keel. Now, John Keel is he's inexorably linked to this to this story, and we will get into him. We'll start touching on him in the next episode. But there's high strangeness is when you have all of these different paranormal events happening at once in the same area. You know what I mean? You have where you'll have creature sightings, UFO sightings, cryptid sightings, missing time, you know, and it's all happening at the same time in the same area. And it's there's also like a time period which was new to me, that like high strangeness usually occurs between 2 and 4 a.m. Who knew?
I did not know that, actually.
Yeah, there's something about that time. I mean, hey, that goes back to
witching hour.
3 a.m. You know, the the demonic hour, or whatever they call it. But that seemed to be the consensus that these, you know, obviously we'll get into this more detail later, but these strange phone calls, these encounters with my man Indrid Cold.
Dude, I just want to stop right here, and I can't wait to fucking jet to episode 3 to discuss this, because it's been brought up. Oh, dude, the idea of this motherfucker,
he has a bunch of different representations, and we'll go across them because not everyone's accounts of Indrid Cold are the same. So we will definitely go over him in spades.
Just realized that my mic output fader on my preamp was way up there. So if I crackle, gang, sorry, I dropped it. Sorry about that.
I don't like audio technicians.
I checked it. I realized in my own voice when I was laughing to it. I was like, God damn it, what's going on? And I looked and I was like, yeah, they'll get over it.
They will. And maybe you weren't, maybe you can fix it in post and we can just cut this whole bullshit out.
Maybe.
Or maybe we'll leave it in. Yeah, Peter James, what do you think?
I'm coming through.
He says keep it. Yeah, he says keep it. He does.
I mean, if he's coming through, then I'm coming through.
Yeah, you're fine. Well, you're fine.
Okay.
He's more concerned about me on my end here.
Well, at the end of the day, if you're coming through, then you're all set.
Yeah, I think we're good. I think we're good.
So next week, we're going to continue our series with a discussion about this year-long rash of encounters with the Mothman. Starting in 1966, we're going to touch on the infamous TNT area. I love it. And the infamous tragedy of the Silver Bridge collapse.
It's going to be good. It is. So, Jay, you got a closing statement for us tonight?
I mean, the only closing statement I could pull from here is you fixing your throwing shade at people for 2021. And I think, if anyone, if you're sending a message to Ken, if you're listening to this, let's make a concerted effort to get this son of a bitch some help. I mean, because he's destroying families. He's ruining friendships. Just stop the shade.
I'm coming through.
Love you.
I love you too, buddy. I guess my closing statement for this evening would be, you know what? Just live honorably and don't throw shade at people. No, but if just the stains on our history, American history, and different things that have happened, they can leave a lasting result, and they do, with not just people and our history, but also in what seems to be the paranormal. So I mean, the concept of these things is endlessly interesting, and you definitely do some research on some history of the Native American burial sites, traditions, lands, all that kind of stuff.
And very seriously, a rest in peace to Chief Cornstalk, because oh my God. And if we are, which I think we may be posting this on November 10th, which just so happens to be the 243rd anniversary of his death, which we did not plan that.
Not planned. Not planned. Yeah, rest in peace, and all respect to a great leader of the Shaunee. All
people. Respect.
But all right, that's going to do it for episode 1 of the Mothman month, which is November. Can't wait to bring you more. And for Other Dangers podcast, I'm Ken James.
I'm Jason McKittrick.
And as always, have a spooky evening.
Spooky.
Thank you for listening to Other Dangers Podcasts. Have you had a run-in with the Other Dangers? You can reach us at otherdangerspodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to have a short discussion about the Other Dangers, you can find us on Facebook and on Instagram at Other Dangers Podcast. We are now streaming on iTunes Podcasts, Amazon, Google, and many other streaming services. We are also available on YouTube. And please, after listening, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can continue to bring you the Other Dangers.